Hi, hello. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to stop a panic attack midway through. So by that, I mean, if you're already having a panic attack, what do you do to stop that happening, to shift yourself into a different kind of experience? I'm Orla Kirby. I am a therapist and I specialise in helping people to move themselves away from severe anxiety and or OCD. I do that using hypnotherapy and NLP. Ideally, I'm aiming for people by the end of working with me to be very deeply calm, very confident much of the time, able to create the kind of life they want to create for themselves. So there's a particular kind of method or recipe, I suppose, that I teach to people when I'm working with them to stop a panic attack in its tracks and to shift away from it altogether, to shift out of a panic attack and into a different kind of way of experiencing the world. This is kind of quite simple, but then each of the steps takes some learning and practicing, particularly the two different breathing techniques that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to kind of summarize the technique in this, or the process or the recipe in this video, and then I'm going to go back and kind of talk about each part of it in more detail in the next 3 videos. So the approach is that you first of all use box breathing. Okay, and again I'm going to explain what that is in a moment. So first of all, you use box breathing, and this is kind of a way of inserting a kind of pause, gathering yourself together. It's excellent breath for creating a kind of stop, right? So the first thing you do is you use box breathing, and then after 5 or 6 of these box breaths, you shift seamlessly from that. By seamlessly, I just mean you're not stopping and then doing the next thing. You're going straight from the box breathing into the next thing. So you go straight from the box breathing into a relaxed 4-8 hypnotic breath. And again, I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. While also imagining something amazing, right? Something that you find beautiful, or that's very important to you, or that just feels lovely to hold in your mind. It could be something that sounds amazing, or something that looks amazing, or something that feels amazing, right? And you're doing that at the same time as you're using this 4-8 hypnotic breath. Okay. And that is it, basically. It is that simple. And sometimes when I tell people about this, it sounds almost too simple to work, right? But I have taught this to dozens and dozens of people now. And everyone who has managed to learn both of the breathing techniques and implement this together, it has worked for them, right? So I feel like this is a pretty solid method. I think it's definitely worth giving it a really decent go, right? I'm not saying this is the only way to shift yourself out of a panic attack, right? There will be loads and loads of ways of doing that. However, this is a way that I found to really work for people. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about what each of those elements is now, right? So just to remind you a bit, as an overview, the method itself is box breathing first, 5 or 6 box breaths, and then seamlessly moving into this 4-8 breath while also imagining something wonderful, right? So you have box breathing followed by 4-8 breathing plus imagining something lovely. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about the 4-8 breath. And so this isn't the order in which you use it if you're trying to shift yourself out of a panic attack, but this is the order in which I would teach this to someone, because it's going to be easier to learn the box breathing if you learn the 4-8 breathing first, right? So the 4-8 breathing, there's a few basic elements of this, and again I will do a video where I go into more detail on each of them in a moment, but the first thing is that you want to relax, really deeply relax your whole body. This is more when you're practicing, right? You don't need to do this in the situation in the panic attack necessarily, because it will kind of be automatically associated by that point with the breathing, right? So you will just find that when you do the 4-8 breath, you will to an extent relax your body because you'll have practiced it so much by that point, right? But this is more when you're learning this breath initially. The very first thing to do is to really get very super relaxed and floppy all over your body. You can do a progressive relaxation. There are different ways into this. Then the next thing is to really make sure that your whole face is very relaxed, kind of limp, loose and relaxed. And particularly your nose and your mouth, your jaw, you want that whole area like very, very relaxed, right? And then the kind of breathing that you do is influenced by this really deep facial relaxation, right? So I'm going to show you the breath and then I'll explain kind of what I mean. So if I was going to kind of breathe really using my nose, you'd hear me kind of sucking in air and then like blowing out air, right? So this is breathing just using my nose. I'm not breathing through my mouth, I'm breathing through my nose. But it's a particular way of breathing through the nose that I'm going to show you. So if I was going to breathe using my nose, and my nose is very like active, then you'd kind of hear this, right? You'd hear me sucking in that air, and then you'd hear me like blowing out the air with my nose, right? So yeah, that's probably kind of exaggerated, but you would hear something like that. And if you're doing it yourself, you'd feel that your nose is doing something. Your nose is active, right? We think of our nose as like doing stuff in the same way as our hand or our arm, but the muscles in my nose, that, you know, all of this, there's an activity going on there, right? And right, so what we're wanting with the relaxed hypnotic breath is for there to be like much less activity here. We want my nose to be just very relaxed and at ease, and the breath is kind of moving in a way it feels like it's being pulled from further back, right? So it is traveling through my nose and back out through my nose. It's going in through my nose and out through my nose. But the nose itself isn't that involved in that. It's not that active, right? So it's more like this. I'm going to show you the way that is this 4-8 relaxed hypnotic breathing style, right? Like this. So you can probably hear, hopefully you can hear the sound on the video, that's a different kind of sound, right? And you can maybe, I don't know if you can see, but my nose is much more still. I don't know whether you can see that or not. But yeah, I'll show you again. So it's... Okay, so it kind of feels like there's almost being pulled, when I'm breathing in, it's being pulled from up here and further back, and I can feel the breath along the roof of my mouth and the back of my throat being pulled in, right? But my nose is not involved. And then as I'm breathing out again, my nose is completely relaxed, right? And again, I can feel it along the back of my throat as I breathe out. And you can feel and hear, hopefully, how different that is to... Okay. Now, you might think, why does this matter? Why is this important? And, you know, to a certain extent, any slow breathing is relaxing and is great for you. You know, so, you know, that's true, right? Even if you're breathing and you're using your nose loads and you're slowing down your breathing, that is still going to be calming and relaxing. So great, right? It's just that here I'm showing you this kind of super, super relaxed way to do it so that you can use that breathing to reach this even deeper level of calm more easily, right? Because it means that you can allow your face to be more relaxed as you're breathing, which sends that kind of deeper relaxation message to your brain, to your early mind. And it just feels a lot more peaceful once you get really used to doing it that way. So worth learning, worth practicing. Can take a little while to get a hang of that though. So the next part is that you're going to be counting in for 4 and out for 8, right? So it's an in for 4, out for 8 breath, and that's 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. The next part is that you are going to be using your chest and tummy together. So, you know, if this is my chest and this is my tummy, they're going to be moving up together and sinking down together. So I'm going to be breathing in, breathing out. So sometimes people are more kind of like this with their chest and tummy, or it might be mainly their chest moving or mainly their tummy moving. And with this breath, in this particular style of relaxed breathing, it's going to be both moving together, right? Then I put here seamless and flowing. This just means that you're not holding a breath, right? So sometimes if people are breathing deeply, they're going to take a big breath in, like, and they stop. and they stop, and they stop. Right? Or they might stop at just one of those places. They might stop just at the top of the breath or just at the bottom of the breath. And what we want with this breath is to be continually cycling round. So you're not even thinking, right, this is the end of the in-breath, and now I'm going to breathe out. You're just breathing in, and then you're going to begin breathing out. And then you're going to begin breathing in, and then you're going to begin breathing out. So you're always doing one or the other. You're never pausing or stopping in between, right? And you want to get to a stage where that feels really easy and natural, and you're not having to kind of struggle with that. That just feels really very doable and natural and easy to you, okay? Okay, so those are the main parts to remember. Relaxing your whole body first, doing this thing where you're relaxing your nose and your face, so you're breathing in and out through your nose, but it's in this particular way that I was showing you. 4-8 counting, so in for 4, out for 8, moving your chest and tummy together, and having this seamless flowing breath where you're not holding your breath at any point. Added to that, you can also be using your imagination, which I'll talk more about in a moment, while you're doing this breath. And really, to learn this breath properly, you need to practice it like every day, pretty much, right? 7 days out of 7 is going to work a lot better than 4 days out of 7. If you practice it once a week, it's just going to take you a long time to learn it, and you might not ever learn it properly, right? So really, ideally, you want to practice for about 10 minutes every day, right? Like just again and again and again, because that is the way that your brain and body learn the most easily. Okay, so that's quite a brief overview, and I'm going to do this next video in a moment where I talk in more detail about this breathing technique and how to practice it and some kind of challenges that people can face. And if you want even more depth again, you can go and find my guide to meditation, which is orlakirby.com/learn to meditate. And there's even more detail there about how to do this breathing technique. Okay, so that's the 4-8 breathing, and that is what I would suggest if you want to follow this method or this recipe for moving yourself away from panic attacks. I would suggest that you learn that breathing technique first, right? Make that your priority. That's probably going to take you a while, right? For some people, that's going to take a month. For other people, that might take 3 months, right? So that seems like a long time to be just learning this and not being able to apply it to the panic attacks, particularly, as well as you will be able to later anyway. And I realise that that's frustrating. It's true that the more time you can give it, right, and of course everyone has different lives and people have different things going on, but the more time you can give it, if you could give it half an hour a day, then your progress could be quicker, right? It needs to be at least 10 minutes a day probably to learn it properly. If you can give it more time, you will progress more quickly. But you do what you can do, right? You do what feels possible and doable for you. Then once you've got that kind of feeling natural and feeling relatively easy, and that it can coax you into a kind of peaceful, relaxed state, and it feels enjoyable, then you are ready to learn this other breathing technique, which I call box breathing, right? Now, of course, it's up to you. You could also just start learning them simultaneously, right? There's no right or wrongs. A kind of easier version of box breathing, if you want something that's more straightforward to learn immediately, would be breathing in for 3 seconds, holding your breath for 3 seconds, breathing out for 3 seconds. Okay, so you breathe in, so it's more like a kind of a triangle shape. So you breathe in for 3 seconds, you hold your breath for 3 seconds, you breathe out for 3 seconds. You breathe in for 3 seconds, you hold your breath for 3 seconds, you breathe out for 3 seconds. Yeah, that's more immediately possible to learn more easily. So if you want something that that you could use that would have a certain amount of impact on panic tomorrow, then that's something that you could learn and practice straight away. Generally, though, as I say, my advice and my general approach to working with people, of course, I would also take into account what they think and what they reckon is going to work for them. Generally, what I find to work best for most people is to really learn that 4-8 technique first, and then to learn other breathing techniques afterwards, because that one just gives you a really good grounding and it makes the other ones easier to learn, right? So once you're feeling very comfortable with the 4-8 technique, it's great to learn this box breathing technique too. And basically, the box breathing technique involves really emptying your lungs of air, right? So you kind of do that before you even breathe in. You really empty your lungs of air, and then you breathe in for 5 seconds. You hold your breath for 5 seconds. You breathe out for 5 seconds. You hold your breath for 5 seconds. right? So you're holding with empty lungs at the end as well. So you breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold your breath for 5 seconds. You breathe out for 5 seconds, you hold your breath for 5 seconds. Okay? And you can do, if you think of that as a square, if you think of that as one box breath, that square, you can do like 5 or 6 of those in a row. If you do more than that, if you were to practice this 10 of those or 20 of those, you just start running a bit short on oxygen, and that might leave you feeling kind of strange and it might not be that helpful. So whether you're practicing or you're using this in a shifting yourself out of a panic attack type situation, or whatever you're using it for, I would recommend just doing 5 to 6 of these in a row. You could do 5 to 6 and then do some other kind of breathing and then go back and do another 5 to 6, right? Or you could do 5 to 6 and do something else altogether and come back and do another 5 to 6. So that's fine, right? But it's just in terms of doing in a row, I would recommend only 5 to 6 of these in a row. Okay. So you can kind of see, hopefully, how common, well, maybe, it's hard to say, but, and people are different, right? So people's learning styles are different. But for most people, I find that it's easier to learn the 4-8 technique before this one, because these are kind of quite a long in-breath, and there's quite a lot of control in this breath, and it's almost like it takes quite a lot of focus and quite a lot of concentration, and you will be doing this breath more well, if you see what I mean, like more in a relaxed way, if you already are applying all of that stuff from the 4-8 breathing, right? So as you're doing this box breathing, I'd want you to be applying all of that stuff that I was talking about with the other breath, right? So with the 4-8 breath, things like moving your chest and tummy together, having your face really relaxed, breathing in through your nose in that special way. You are holding your breath here, right? But apart from the breath holding, all of the other things, and the counting, I suppose, the particular 4-8 count. So what I'm saying is the same in both breaths, is the relaxing your body, having your face and nose relaxed, breathing through your nose in that special way, and having your chest and tummy moving together. Those things you're doing here in the box breath too, right? So, and it's going to be easier to learn how to do those bits of it in the 4-8 breath, which you can practice ongoingly for as long as you like, right? You can do that for 20 minutes, you can do that for an hour, you can do that for 2 hours, and it would still feel lovely and amazing and peaceful, right? Once you've learned it, once you are effective in using it. So that's why, because partly because it's just an easier breath to learn, how to do properly, but also because you can do it ongoingly and for longer, it's easier to get those basic things right. The relaxation while breathing, the breathing through your nose in this special way, the moving your chest and tummy together. It's easier to get those things right in the 4-8 breath. And then you can sort of take those skills with you and apply them when you're learning the box breathing, right? Because if you were doing the box breathing and not doing that stuff, just moving your chest and tummy differently, or only breathing through your chest, say, or only breathing with your tummy, the box breathing wouldn't be quite as effective, right? Okay, so hopefully that will make sense then. And I would say that once, really it ought to be quite quick learning the box breathing once you've got the 4-8 breathing up and running. So once you've got the 4-8 breathing working for you, it might only take a week or two to learn the box breathing really well, right? Maybe even just a week. Then when you've got both of those breathing techniques down, you can use them together in this kind of method or recipe that I've just found works really well for people to shift yourself out of a panic attack, right? So, and into feeling very different. So the approach here is to use the box breathing first, because the box breathing is an excellent breath for really resetting, for gathering yourself, and I'll explain more about that in the video that's specifically about box breathing. But it's a really great kind of gathering yourself together, inserting a pause, kind of getting hold of yourself type breath, right? And you want to do it for these 5 or 6 of those, and then you go seamlessly from that. You go straight into in for 4. Out for 8. So if your last of the 6 box breaths is, in for 5, hold your breath for 5, out for 5, hold your breath for 5. You then go in for 4, out for 8. In for 4, out for 8. Right? So you see what I mean about continuing straight from one to the other. Yeah? And it's seconds, in case I didn't make that clear. So the box breath is seconds as well. So, so in for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, out for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, and then in for 4, out for 8. In for 4, out for 8, right? So 5 or 6 of these box breaths, 5 or 6 of those box shapes, right? And then straight into in for 4, out for 8, without any pausing. In for 4, out for 8. And while you're doing the in for 4, out for 8, I would recommend right away filling your mind with something wonderful to imagine. And again, I'll talk more about that in the video on using imagination to shift yourself out of a panic attack. However, really, it could be anything that's wonderful for you to imagine. You could imagine a waterfall. You could imagine being in a forest. You could imagine, a holiday that you've been on that was really amazing. You could imagine just like your favorite color, right? Surround yourself with your favorite color. You could imagine a sound that you really love, or a piece of music that you really enjoy. You could imagine, the feeling of warmth of sun on your skin, whatever works for you, and you can experiment there. And that could be something very simple, like one particular color, or something quite complicated. It could be a whole scene or some kind of complex imagining. And I'll talk a bit more about that in the video on using imagination to shift yourself away from panic attack, right? But that's how it all works together, right? This video is more to give you an idea of how it all works together. Is you start with the box breathing, so you recognize, oh, I'm having a panic attack, I'm in a panic attack. You do the box breathing, so in for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, out for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, and you keep doing that for 5 or 6 goes round, right? 5 or 6 goes around, that lets you get hold of yourself, and then you seamlessly go in for 4, out for 8, and even as you're starting to do the in for 4, you're starting this imaginative work, right? The only reason not to do imaginative stuff while you're doing the box breathing is just that the box breathing is quite challenging. So it'd be too much to do to also do imagining at the same time, probably for most people. Okay, so if you think of the box breathing as the kind of getting a hold of yourself, like gathering yourself, inserting a pause, the 4-8 is about relaxing and mood shifting, right? Which is helped by the imagination. Is about, so if the box breathing almost holds you back from panicking more or panicking further, or it kind of puts a bit of a stop in place. And the 4-8 is about lifting your mood and shifting you into a different state, and feeling much calmer, feeling good, right? They kind of serve different purposes and they work together. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. Do feel free to email me or get in touch if you have questions about this, or you can comment on the video below, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next video.